Hello and welcome. Ah, some little housekeeping here. StreamYards has stripped their platform even more, and we no longer can play our intro or any of our other clips. So we're pretty basic around here with just that intro and our slides going forward, unless something happens where we have an income coming in on this channel where we can pay for something. Like a
I'm
membership.
not saying that I will sell feet pics for sponsorship, but
He's gonna have to sell feet pics.
I'm gonna have to. Yeah,
What is it? Somebody said something that was like cake photos. You're gonna have to like smash cakes with your feet and sell that.
that's going a little too far right there.
Well,
Off to a great start.
just saying. Well, welcome. Thanks for joining us tonight on After the Weekend. I'm AfterTheWeekend, and I am joined by.
Hi, I'm Beard of Liberty now in HD, but I can't talk.
Yeah, you are. That's a pretty good camera you got going on there. Let's look at that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I would say, wow.
Amazon Prime days. You find the good stuff for cheap. Well, you find the okay stuff for cheap.
I was like, wow, that's what you really look like. Thought you were Asian. Actually, the thing that I noticed that you changed your camera was it was never you. You were always very clear, but all the detail now, even more so, I see in the background on things the clarity is impressive.
Yeah. I actually had to reposition a few of these things here because now you can see what's on them. My bear doesn't just disappear into the darkness anymore.
I was going to say you had to hide all your dirty anime books in the background there.
Oh, no, they're still there. They're just down here out of frame.
Got to make sure nobody knew about any of your fetishes that you like to read about.
Moving on.
Well, we missed you last episode when I had Mando on for the interview.
Yeah.
But glad to have you back, and I'm very much looking forward to talking to you about this movie. This is my pick. This is something I've had real quick. Is it too late? It's never too late, Squeaka. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. Why don't you talk? I'm going to get my phone out here. Just ignore the flash you see.
Sure. No problem. Do what you need to do. But this is my pick. This was something I grew up watching it a ton. I know this was a first time watch for you, so I'm curious to see how you respond. I know you're going to respond like
not technically. I have seen this a couple times before because it would be something that they just put on the TV when we had family gatherings.
Okay, no problem. But and it's since I've done the channel, I've always kind of had it in the back of my mind, and we just haven't got around it. So finally made sure to do it. And that's Innerspace. So we'll get into that in a minute, but we'll say hello to the people that are here. Jeff has been waiting a while. So sorry about that, Jeff, but appreciate you are here. And then
Mrs. Every time I see his profile picture, I want a variation if it's just 3 of him and get the 3 Jeff Moon thing.
Yeah, I want him howling up with the wolves. That's what I want.
Yeah.
That needs to be a shirt. I would wear that. Jeff, you got to make.
Actually, I don't want him howling. I want him looking perturbed at people using AI and calling it their own creation.
There you go. And little Spidey is here as well, and then
nice logo.
And then Squeaka's here as well, so appreciate that. But yes, we are here tonight to talk about Innerspace, and I this is not like the greatest movie ever, but this is to me always a fun watch. This is just a enjoyable film, I think. And even like you said, like you could even throw it on in the background kind of type thing. It's fun to watch with a group of people, but definitely a kind of like underrated film, I feel like. And if you haven't seen that, seen this before to give you. Oh, hey, it's Unlocking Lore. How you doing, Maria? Thanks for joining us. It's Dennis Quaid is stars in this with Martin Short and then Meg Ryan. It
Although
was
this art is not doing her any favors. She looks like Jack Nicholson's Joker.
she does, yeah. She's a little pasty. She looks a little Jokerish. You're right. And we're
Yeah.
going to share a few things too about some of the promotional material, by the way, as we get into this. But this was directed by Joe Dante, who did Gremlins, and it was produced by Steven Spielberg with Amblin Entertainment. There are a few other producers to this. I can't think of their names. I'm forgetting. It's the team that did Batman 1989. We're part of the team that brought this to.
Yeah, you're talking to the wrong person asking for names behind the scenes and things.
I know. I can't think. I had it like all of a sudden tip my tongue, but Dennis Quaid, he is a former naval pilot and test pilot who has been hired to partake in an experiment with miniaturization of essentially taking it basically is like a little spaceship that they're going to miniaturize. They're going to inject it into a rabbit, and then he's going to run some tests inside there, and then they're going to re-enlarge him. But due to some espionage during the experiment, a evil corporation breaks in and tries to steal these the kind of the unique thing to make this whole operation work are these specialized chips. One is in a computer in the lab, the other one's actually miniaturized with the ship along with it, so they're there to try and steal both. And the head scientist who's running this experiment, he makes an escape, and while being chased down by a henchman of the evil company trying to steal this technology. And during the escape, he gets mortally wounded, and before he dies, he injects him into Martin Short, who happens to be a hypochondriac.
Yeah,
and kind of the experience of discovering that there is a miniaturized man inside his body, because part of the experiment involves him shooting a camera behind the eye of a rabbit. So he does that to Martin Short, and then he attaches a little microphone and speaker in the eardrum of him as well, so he can hear and talk to him. And I'll just say it here: Martin Short thinks he's possessed for a short period of time because he can hear Dennis Quaid talking to him. But there's also
I would probably think I was going crazy as well.
Yeah. But part of the movie too is there is a time frame, because Dennis Quaid almost only has so much oxygen. He's pressurized, so he just can't breathe air that Martin Short breathes in, and so they've got to get the chip back so he can be re-enlarged and taken out of Martin Short before he dies. So interesting plot, but a lot of fun. And we've got a few other people coming in. Oh, I see Tom. Hey, Tom. Yeah, we were just talking about it. It is a great movie. So we're going to change things up how we kind of do the slides, but we're just going to get straight into the cast. I don't know about you, but I think this movie has a phenomenal cast in it. There's a lot of cameos in it, for one, but even just the stars and some of the supporting people that come along too. A lot of them are big fan favorites of Joe Dante. But
see, I know you say cameos, and I'm looking at this thinking like I recognize 2 or 3 names.
So I'll bring up a few of those as we go along. But at the time, Dennis Quaid and Martin Short were, in this film, were the two biggest names. Dennis Quaid had done The Right Stuff, as well as he did Enemy Mine with Louis Gossett Jr. That's another kind of classic sci-fi 80s film, if you've ever seen it. And then Martin Short, he was very well known for SCTV in Canada, as well as SNL. He spent a year prior to this. And I even want to say this year, this is the same year that the Three Amigos came out, so he was starting to break into film a little
Oh,
more
yeah.
at the time. And then even this was Meg Ryan's first big film. It just hit me when I pulled this image of the cast. I'm like,
I was about
Meg
to say,
Ryan.
did you leak Meg Ryan?
There's no Meg Ryan. Didn't even realize it. Well, she's in this movie, but this was her
They
first
got
big.
Lydia's interviewee instead of.
I know. I just realized that. But yeah. Oh no. Oh, Maria says she can't stay long. About to go to bed. No problem. Appreciate you even stopping by to say hi. It was great seeing you in the chat. Hope you sleep well. But
Well, since we're talking cast, special shout out to babyface Robert Picardo, who still sometimes has, despite being babyface, looks exactly like he looks later on in life, just with
yes.
curly hair.
Oh yeah. He like has not really aged. I mean, he has, but he still looks so similar. But yeah, Meg Ryan. This was like her first big starring role. She had done, Top Gun the year before this, and where she was Goose's wife. But yeah, the person that apparently replaces her in this, Jeffrey Boehm, he was the writer of the film. He had a small cameo as he's
Oh,
interviewed right in the beginning of it. And then, Robert Picardo's one. He's been in a lot of Joe Dante films, starting from, I think he was he in Piranha? But I know he was in The Howling, and he's kind of been, at least from The Howling since, he pops up in um, Joe Dante films across the board.
see,
When
I've
you,
seen so few movies that I know him A as the Doctor from Star Trek Voyager, and
yeah,
B is I forget his name in Stargate Atlantis.
yeah,
That I know him from two like weird sci-fi shows.
he's a very underrated actor that he should have been used so much more in
Yeah, he's actually
film.
pretty. Well, he probably is. He's actually fairly like he has a lot of potential. Like he can do comedy, he can do series. The dude
Yeah.
is like a classically trained like a opera singer.
Well, you everything that he does, though. I mean, no matter the role, he gives it 110%. He is all in and has fun with it.
Oh, he has fun with this one.
Yeah. But like Wendy Shaw's another one, Henry Gibson. They were both, and I mean, again, all these people pop up, but they had bigger roles in The Burbs. That's a film that we reviewed here. Along with Dick Miller is also too. He's been in every single one of Joe Dante's movies. There was one exception. I can't remember what it was. His scene got cut. Um, but a very popular regular there. Um, and right next to Dick Miller there is the guy who plays Ozzy. He's the head of the lab where they're doing this experiment. John Hora. He actually has been Joe Dante's cinematographer for nearly everything he's done as well. He did pass away a few years ago, but when they were trying to cast this role and they were trying to think of who would be good to play it, Steven Spielberg was like, John would be great at this. And they're like, John's not an actor, but they made him do a test and he did a great job. And he does. I mean, you would have thought he was an actor by the way he did it. He did such a good job. uh, but Kevin McCarthy does a great job. He actually was in the Twilight Zone movie, and he was in the segment that Joe Dante directed, which is another reason using him here as well. Vernon Wells plays the henchman, Iago. I want to say he's got such a weird name, but he does such a good job. And then even to like the evil scientist lady, Fiona Lewis is pretty good in this too when she pops up.
Yeah.
And then a few of the other cameos, like Chuck Jones. Chuck Jones, there, he's in the. We'll talk about it later. The grocery store scene. He's the one. He's like $800 a bottle. Who'd want to buy it? He animated Bugs Bunny. He's a famous Warner
Yeah.
Brothers animator, and because of there's a lot of Bugs Bunny references, that's why he is here. Rance
Oh, makes
Howard.
sense. I didn't think about that.
Rance Howard is in that scene too. He is Ron Howard's dad. That's another one that pops up. But and then William, I can't see it because it's so small on my screen. But Chalaret, I might be saying his last name wrong.
William Shallert.
Shallert, yeah. He was the doctor in the Incredible Shrinking Man film, so that was kind of why they cast him for this too, just because of the similarity there as well. But and then too, you had two of Martin Short's former cast members, Joe Flattery and Andrea Martin, when he thinks he's possessed, waiting in the doctor's office. They did SCTV together, but like I said, there's a lot of good actors in this, a lot of just memorable people where I go, you've seen them before when they pop up. But yeah.
Yeah, people see, for me, it's usually like, I know that face or that voice, and I could not tell you where from.
Yeah.
Like Mark Taylor's one of those faces. You've seen him. You've seen him everywhere. You couldn't have told me his name until you read it right now.
Right now, I'm trying to find Mark. Oh, yeah. He's, for me, like, that's always he's the photographer that dies after being bitten by the spider in Arachnophobia.
Yeah. He's just one of those faces.
Yeah, you've seen him. Well, I was gonna say, growing up though too, like I remember seeing this and remembering when Martin Short goes as doctor and hearing William Challaret's voice. He at least in Michigan, I don't know if they were in any other states surrounding that, but it was Arbor Drugs. He was like the official spokesperson for this pharmacy in Michigan, and just he wasn't in the commercials. He just did the voiceover and narrated them. But next we're going to get into the numbers. And so
no bumpers, folks. We're just going right in.
We got to go right in. No clips. Don't have that ability anymore. But like I said, this is produced by Amblin Entertainment with Steven Spielberg. You got Joe Dante, who did Gremlins, and they did that together. You've got Dennis Quaid and you've got Martin Short in this. So just to even go with those actors. So those are the two, those are the biggest actors in this at the time. You did have Meg Ryan, but like I said, this was kind of her first starring role. But
yeah.
What do you think this cost? And what do you think this did?
See, outside of some of your two leads, main leads, you've got not a ton of like complicated sets. There's a couple of things. They've got some good special effects in here, but I just don't see this costing that much. I kind of want to say maybe it cost $40 million.
Okay. Well, again, this is one you got to think about too. I mean, there are a fair amount of special effects in this film.
Yeah.
But this was still at that time where there's no CGI, where the budget is so ballooned by that. Practical effects were expensive, but they just were never that insane. So Jacob says $35 million on the budget.
I kind of want to say $40 million budget, probably then money. So decent, decently sized budget. Okay. And I think I want to say for the box office, the names probably sold it fairly well, but it probably didn't do amazingly. But I remember it being something that always was around, so I kind of want to think maybe.
Well, you got a July 1st release date, so I mean, peak summertime, right there. I mean,
I'm thinking it probably did double its budget. I think it probably did $80 million.
Okay, I mean, location-wise, right? I mean, it was entirely filmed in California, so I want to say they spent a month of that in the Bay Area, and then the rest was Southern California and studio time.
Yeah, it may be even less for the budget because even with Dennis Quaid, most of his shooting they could have done in a couple of days because he didn't really have to travel a whole bunch. They had a couple of on-site shots, but otherwise he was mostly
Sure.
just in the vehicle.
Yeah. Well, like, I mean, one. So I lived in Northern California, and we had Safeway. So that's where the character Martin Short plays, Jack Putter. He works at is Safeway, and that wouldn't be Southern California. You know, that if it was Southern California, it'd be Ralph's. That's what's big down there. That's the two big different grocery chains. You got Safeway in Northern California. You got Ralph's in Southern California. And the labs, they don't say exactly where, but Silicon Valley. So I mean, like that's south of San Francisco, kind of northwest of San Jose is kind of that area right there. It's like that's where like Palo Alto is.
Okay.
If you look on a map, but that's kind of the region right there. But they part of that, yeah, it was filmed Southern California, and some part of that was filmed Northern California. So like the mall, they're actually at the Galleria Mall. So that's the mall where they filmed some of the scenes for Terminator 2, if you remember that at
Oh,
all.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. So that's where the mall is at when they go to film that portion of it. But Jacob says 100 million on the box office. Okay. So there we go. So 27 million was the budget. Yeah.
Man, I was thinking earlier today. My gut instinct was to go with 30 million, but I talked myself up. Dang.
Yeah. But in today's dollars, it would be nearly an $80 million budget. I mean, that, so that had a good,
Well, yeah.
that was a good, budget for its time. But they did not know how to market this film. And so it was a
Wow.
bomb, which I never knew that. I mean, I don't think, growing up, I never thought this probably did like huge. But I was very surprised to hear it was a bomb. But normally I don't have
Yeah.
this, and I was able to find out this information. This film, though, did end up becoming a success because, as we've been talking, it was released on VHS in 1988, and then it got a DVD release in 97. And with that, and that's with like video rental estimate, kind of what it made with that and home video. I mean, it did 95 million. I mean, how precise, I couldn't tell you, but clearly,
Right.
it was it was something that it found its feet, with
Well,
home
I guess
video.
that makes a little bit of sense because you've got a year or two lag time, and in that period of time, Martin Short's name and his popularity would have grown. So people would have seen that and been like, "Oh, here's a Martin Short movie I haven't seen," and then they would have really rented it or bought it.
So this, yeah, was huge at video stores. This was the one of the biggest for its year home video rentals, and just word of mouth that people are like, you got to rent this. But I got a fun story here. I know I've shared this before. I don't know. I'm sure it here at some point, but um, back when I was living in Michigan, my dad, I don't know what radio station it was in Michigan. It would have been something in the Detroit area. I don't know what the question was, but there was a question. You called in, get it right, and this was your prize, the VHS release of Innerspace, and he won. And I remember as a kid, I think it took though, like it was like 6 to 8 weeks before we got the VHS, and I still wish I had a copy of it. But it was one of the first films that when they released it on widescreen, and I remember
Oh,
when you would pop in the VHS, because I don't think it was an ad for the soundtrack, but it showed a small clip from the club scene where they meet up with the cowboy, Robert Picardo's character, and it had this like little clip, and I want to say it was talking about it being in a widescreen format because right when you got something, it was pan and scan. It was made to fit a 4.3 um, landscape. So yeah, this was very unique in that it was widescreen. And I kind of don't like remember picking up on the fact that it was widescreen as a kid. But
Hmm.
me, my older sister, and our cousin like watched the snot out of this film all the time. I mean, watched it. I would say at least like every other month. I almost feel like. I mean, when we first got it, I think we watched it a lot, but like we always would just watch this movie.
I'm pretty sure what I saw was a recorded VHS of a TV cut of this. So it may have actually been edited to 4:3 for the TV broadcasts. Because I have no recollection of it being widescreen either. But I also have very little recollection of the movie in general.
So the initial release was widescreen. Now I don't know once they started making more, um, making it more mass produced for home video. It may have changed to a 4.3 format, but
Yeah.
but you got to remember too, this was a year before Batman '89 came out, and Batman '89 is really what kicked off people owning mainstream movies on home video. So VHS tapes cost. I mean, at the time, you were lucky if they made something on like mass production. I mean, it would have been like a $40 VHS. I mean, that was a fair amount of money back then in the mid '80s. Um, and I want to say like Batman when it came out, I think it was $20, and that was like 1990, right when that came out on home video.
Mm.
So VHSs were like real expensive. I mean, I remember as a kid, we either had like blank, you know, VHS tapes that we would record something, whether it was shows or a movie off of TV, um, or even cable, or like I remember having like kids cartoons like where you would buy like that on VHS tape, and it was not nearly as expensive. Like I remember like the first couple of like Ninja Turtles like that came out like in '87. They put like those on two separate VHS tapes. I think there was like 3 episodes on one and 3 episodes on the other. It was like the first 6 episodes.
Yeah, my family had a couple of the Max Fleischer Superman cartoons on
Yeah,
there were those on VHS. I think that was actually given to us with our VCR by my grandfather. It's like our first tapes.
yeah, and I mean, still at this time, too, it wasn't really till like the late '80s. I mean, having a VHS player, was somewhat of a premium thing to have in your house, and most people, if they did have one, they had one. Right, it would be in the living room, and like even kind of as a kid when I was little, like right for a long time. I mean, most people had one TV. It wasn't really kind of up until like the '80s. Some people might have 2 TVs, and that usually it was like your parents would have a TV in their bedroom, and or you might get lucky and have like a smaller like black and white TV or something like that. So yeah, I mean, it was a rare thing, but yeah, this was a success at on home video, and I had it written down, and then now for some reason I must have hit something and deleted it. But on the left there, that was the original poster, and again, that was kind of
That's a
part of
choice.
that's kind of part of the problem why it didn't do so well. Because it's like, what's going on there, right? I mean, it's a poster of a giant thumb. I mean, if you're just kind of walking by, you don't really notice that there's a little ship and a little guy there.
Well, I mean, and I know it's supposed to be a ship, but it still looks like a drum kit to me.
But I'm just saying, like, right, like you see that at the
Yeah, it's
theater,
just it's yeah.
you're not going to know really what's going on there. Um, oh, this okay, all right, I found it. I was looking up, but John Alvin did that, and John Alvin like has done so many movie posters. I mean, just think of anything through like the '80s and the '90s, even with I want to say like '70s, might even be the '60s, but like he did like the Indiana Jones posters, things like that. So like this is probably one of his like worst posters too that he ever did. um, and I want to say on the right there, that was actually more of what you would have seen at the video store for like the poster right there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or maybe a little later they might have done that, and like that's like a far better poster of what's going on. Other than it's like, why is there a hand coming out of Dennis Quaid's chest?
Yeah.
Uh, but still, a far better of just like the film and being a lot more exciting, enticing. Um,
Mhm.
and then I've got a couple other posters to share. So um, same thing. These were just more on the left there. That was like another one that you would have seen at, I want to say, probably the video store. I don't think that was something that was at the theaters. But again, that's a better
Oh,
poster there.
very much better.
I mean, we see the ship. We see Dennis Quaid, Meg Ryan, Martin Short. We see Kevin McCarthy and Margaret shrunken down, and the henchman. And then on the right there, that was actually the European poster. So that's like what they had in the UK. It is like, again, that's a far better poster for the film they got in the
Hmm.
UK than over here in the US. And then there's two more here that these are even. I almost had to check. I always thought they were fake, but apparently these were like alternate posters. Again, I don't know where they were used. But and I thought too, like
Okay,
it was,
let me give credit where it's due. The one on the left with the chip coming out of his mouth actually conveys a little bit of what the movie's about, more than the previous two, which lean into the space theme, which makes you think it's going to be a space movie with the stars and everything
sure.
and their designs. So that was at least a little bit more accurate. And the font and then the waviness for the title makes it seem a little bit more comedy and less like science fiction action. It's still not a great poster, but
It
I get it.
it to me, something about, in terms of like the design, the one on the left has got like, it makes me think of like Porky's or Zapped, like some teen slapstick comedy, like raunchy comedy, or like even to like the lettering there. Like, I mean, I get what you're saying, right? But it it's so strange. And then like the other one is like, just, it's weird because for a second I thought it was like clipped photos, because if you look at like the edges, there's all like these different colored rectangles at different angles on the side, and then I'm like, oh no, that was all included in there. But yeah, they had a very tough time marketing this film because it does have a lot of different elements. It is science fiction. It's it's got a bit of action. It's got a bit of like, even though nobody's a spy, but it's more like espionage, you know. And then it's a comedy all at the same time. It's got just, you know, I think with those multiple elements, I think that was like a little tougher thing to maybe pitch what it
Yeah.
was. But like the studio loved the film and were like so excited, but they enjoyed watching it, but it was like they did such a terrible job.
I'm trying to, because that one on these must be re-releases because they're featuring Martin Short, and the one on the right specifically says credits him as the craziest amigo. So
Yeah,
that's later. These I think these have to be re-releases specifically partly because one of them says enters out again for the millions who are going to love it. So it must have been a re-release of like maybe that was like the more mass-produced 4:3 cut because, like you were saying earlier, the widescreen cut may have just been kind of a limited specialty thing at the
yeah.
time.
But both those posters make it look like such a lower budget film.
Yeah.
Like I said, if you don't know what it is, where
Oh no. I'm
what?
sorry. I'm reading this quote on the one on the right. Quote, something for everybody. It ought to join the parade of winners for the best summer since Ghostbusters, Indiana Jones, and Gremlins, blast off and have a good time. The movie's fun. It is not anywhere near Ghostbusters, Indiana Jones, and Gremlins.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's not like Ghostbusters and it's not like Indiana Jones. And Gremlins is such a different thing, but it is a fun movie. But I was gonna
Oh,
say,
it is fun. Yeah.
going back, like the one on the left there is probably, I think, the best of the bunch.
It looks the best, but it is misleading because it makes you think it's more space than the movie
Well,
is.
because the him being on Martin Short being on an angle, and you don't necessarily notice the shrunken down characters at his legs. Yes, it makes it look
Yeah.
like he's floating in space. I mean, I get what you're saying. That's probably the one thing, and I would probably also go. The title should be a lot bigger because it is very
Yeah,
small.
but it is very clearly the best designed
But
poster. It just kind of misconstrues the
it,
theme of the movie.
but it's still what I guess the bigger thing though, I'm getting it right. Like, right, you go to the movies and you see posters either outside or right, you're walking down the hallway to your theater to watch whatever you're there to watch, or when you're leaving, right, you look at the posters. And when
Yeah.
there's that one though, just in general, you would be like, even if you found, you went to watch it and you're like, well, I thought it was going to be in space, but I guess I
But it
get
would
why.
actually make you go watch it. Yeah.
But yeah, you would want to go watch it. You're like, that looks kind of neat, man. Whatever's going on there. So yeah, same thing. Like, even with like the posters, they had some, challenges. But I do have some pictures up from the film. And yeah, so a lot of people say that this movie had the first selfie in it. As you can see in the top left, it actually occurred a few years earlier in European Vacation with Chevy Chase, but
Ah,
it's an analog selfie. I guess that's the big difference. Thelma and Louise is another one that people say was the first selfie, but
yeah.
Yeah, I did think that was funny. And then right, kind of as you're introduced to everybody, right? I mean, like Dennis Quaid, he's washed up. Everybody, you know, is clearly sick of him, probably because he's constantly drunk and he's just an ass. You kind of can tell that there was a relationship prior with him and Lydia, who's a reporter, and was probably charmed by him at first, but then got sick of him as well.
Yeah.
And then Martin Short being a hypochondriac, because when we first meet him, he's in a doctor's office, and like every little thing has an effect on him. But when you kind of see it right there in the middle, it's the second from the left when Ozzy injects Tuck into him. I'm like, some cracked out looking guy hops off an elevator, falls on you, and injects you with a needle. Like, you don't freak out about that. Like, he shows up to work and he's like, I had the most terrifying experience happen to me. But like, of all things, like some stranger injected God knows what into me.
Yeah. He deals with that a lot better than I think even a non hypochondriac would.
I know, out of all the things.
Even okay, let's even say like maybe he didn't really feel it and realize what had happened, but then he turns and looks and watches the guy fall down, and there's a spent
Yeah.
syringe on the ground. I would have gone, I need to go see the doctor right now.
Oh yeah, I'd be like, we need to do a blood test immediately.
It's like well, okay, never mind. I was about to say something, but then the phrasing went through my brain. I thought that is a really terrible way to put it. Never mind. We're going to move on. People can make jokes about feeling a small man getting inserted into. Never mind. I just nearly killed you. Whew.
I kept that from going wrong. Oh man.
Breathe. It's okay.
Yeah,
We're going.
no,
We're back. We're good.
yeah. No, I know what you're getting at there. Glad that you didn't. But Yeah, like that one like always threw me for a loop. Like why he was so like, huh, that's strange.
See, I have to think like he didn't realize he just thought he saw a guy die. That's what he's freaking out about. Because otherwise, with being a hypochondriac, he would have had a absolute meltdown getting stuck by a random needle,
Yeah, yeah.
especially in like the 80s.
Oh yeah. And then like another interesting thing too, like and again, like I remember as a kid never picking up on it, but like rewatching it again, right when we see the lab that they're going to do the experiment in and everything, it's very. I mean, it's a very small but very busy work area and everything like that. And when the heist occurs and Margaret, she makes this comment about like everything being primitive, and right there, like she's like, it's when that robot arm that's like pulling the chip out and everything is doing all of it, which I think for most people they're like, that's pretty fancy looking to me. Like I don't get why it's primitive, but when we see their lab, it's really kind of what you would think a lab would be, where it's all bright lights, sterile. Everything that they have is far more advanced. Where like the other lab too was like very during that scene it was very dark, but when they go back later, it's all like brightly lit, which I thought was very interesting. I don't know if that was just
Hmm.
a visual thing or if there was more explanation in the sense of like, you know, to make him adjusting to the surrounding better. I don't know, but there were little things like that, and then I want to say, is he in the next slide? I gotta check real quick.
Later, Jacob. Thanks for stopping by, buddy.
Thanks, Jacob. We'll see you. I think it is. Yeah, I've got I've got nothing but a whole thing of Robert Picardo because for the little bit he's in, he steals the show. Like in this
Oh,
movie.
absolutely.
Um,
If there is scenery around, he is chewing it and he's loving every single minute.
oh yeah, he is. But we're kind of jumping all over the place. But I'm just trying to think of my favorite moments. Like he gets to work, and Wendy Shaw is the bag, girl at his register, and he's like, where were you last night? And she's like, have you ever tried slam dancing? He's like, oh, he's like, we had a date. He's like, oh, I forgot. She's like packing stuff. She puts eggs in, and then she throws like a gallon glass bottle of Gatorade on top of the eggs, crushing them. Um, but he clearly likes her. She won't give him the time of day. And then later, when they go to the club after he's wearing Tuck's clothes, extra spare change of clothes that he found. One, like I don't picture Dennis Quaid in that outfit at all, but he looks like a little kid who is wearing his dad's clothes. And
Yeah,
like
they're kept in a spare suitcase, as we find out, in case he finds himself in a place he doesn't recognize.
I know, it's like
Basically, if he goes out and parties too much, he's like, oh, I got at least got spare clothes in the trunk.
I know it's like such like a strange explanation that everybody seemed to be fine with. It's like that's
Yeah,
really weird. But they go to this club to meet the cowboy. The cowboy is they never explain where he's from, but it's I'm gonna say some type of Eastern European country at least. Where,
I think, yeah, they allude to that if they don't say like Eastern European or whatever, because I mean, given the time period, that'd be the person like that'd be like the area where like Western stuff would be moving and then being sold off.
yeah, and he's very much obsessed with American culture, but Western culture. He dresses like the gaudiest cowboy in the world. And he does. He's got like a little like afro. They go to they watch where he goes. Hotel wise, Lydia knows where he stays at regularly. They make sure to get the room next to his, so they know when he leaves. And then they go to the club that he goes to every time he's in the area. And Wendy Shaw is out there, and like she looks like an 80s teenager. Like that's the best way to describe it. She's got like this like weird like like hair metal like makeup going on. It's like a green star like eyeshadow like design, and her hair's all crimped. It looks like like crinkly French fries. So I told my wife, I'm like, that's what it looks like to me when I see that look. All that Martin Short has done differently is he's wearing a like gray twill sports coat, and she's all impressed with him. It's not like he did his hair differently or anything like that. Like,
Yeah.
he's wearing an oversized sports coat. That's all it took to impress her. She's like all over him.
It's like, how long have you been living this double life?
He's like,
A while.
a while now. Um, but I'm just I'm gonna
And meanwhile, while all of this is happening, Dennis Quaid is just floating around inside of his body.
eating chicken nuggets.
Yeah. I don't know how long they planned on like. Oh man. Oh, okay. The scene where he has Martin Short's character drink some booze so that he can stick his flask out and catch. I don't care. Okay. Okay. I got a couple things here. There's going to be saliva in that. It's
Yeah,
just going to be there. B. They at least had the sense to talk about how they shrunk down like the air so like he could still that makes sense to breathe it because the molecules would be in different size. The dude's basically drinking like macromolecule whiskey or something out of that flask. It's one of those little sci-fi things that my sci-fi nerd brain goes,
sure.
that's not no.
But like, well, clearly he's a drunk though. Like he don't care.
Oh no, no.
And on top of it, it's a bottle of like Southern Comfort, which it's like it's not even real whiskey. I'm like, yeah, too. I was
Nope.
like, oh, good God. I'm like, I gag. Like
That's whiskey for college kids and people who hate themselves.
yeah, yeah. But it is very true. I mean, that's even like another thing though. Like the special effects in the scene, because first he gets injected into Martin Short's butt, so he's surrounded by fat cells, and it is though like just seeing him like float around. I think Tom mentioned it earlier about it makes me think of an old Disney's attraction called Body Wars. Yeah.
Oh, I don't even know what that is. So
It's not related, but I think I want to say Disney kind of did like two variations. Like they did one where you shrunk down and you went into like the human body, like I want to say like in like this like late '60s, early '70s they had it, and then kind of like mid to the end of the '80s they had this one called Body Wars. I think you can find videos of this on YouTube where like you know kind of went in like a similar way. And but too like he other than I'm like something about that doesn't seem like that was ever intended to happen inside of your body where like you just like blast through like a wall of something and go into like the bloodstream. And at the same time though, I mean, you really would though, he could zip that quickly through his body because the way your body pumps blood, I mean, it is insanely fast. I mean, that's why like right, if you were to get like punctured in the jugular and didn't get it closed up, I mean, you'll bleed out in seconds. Almost
you got to stick a thumb in that.
stick a thumb in it, like Kentucky ballistics say.
Yeah, we don't need to go into the
No, no, no,
details because
no.
this is much more family friendly. I have unfortunately seen some video of somebody who thinks they're okay for about 5 seconds and then they don't
Yeah,
exist anymore. So yeah,
yeah,
things move very quickly in your body.
yeah, yeah. Well, via the bloodstream. I mean, so like how he
Yeah,
does kind of zip around and he gets to certain spots pretty quickly. He truly could that fast. But well, the other thing too, you got to remember. I mean, they don't necessarily say exactly what time, other than I have to imagine it was probably he was expected to be in there for 24 hours. Because it was clearly like in the morning when everything kind of went down. and it happens very quickly where he has to like 9:30 a.m. the following day to get out of there before he runs out of oxygen.
Yeah.
Which it's not like it's a gigantic pod that he's in, but at the same time, it seems like it would have more air in there than that. I don't know why. I just, but I get, right. It's part of the plot of the film.
Yeah.
So,
Because they do specifically mention like they can't even the physical molecule size being different and maybe your body not being able to process it. They did say just the simple pressure difference because of the air pressure that as it was shrunk down versus the atmospheric air pressure around it. They can't just open it, the top of the pod
yeah,
to give them air because they would crush everything inside.
yeah. Um, but part of me though does I'm surprised they didn't kind of talk about more of like the time frame, because then it would almost be interesting if they did kind of put a time stamp like as scenes occurred to give you an idea.
I
Like,
kind of always assumed it was basically just like overnight,
well, I'm just
like
saying,
late morning, early afternoon to the next day.
I just feel like more so with what had to occur, it would have added like more tension to it, I guess.
Oh, okay.
But that's what I mean. Like, right? Like they almost could have used that as like even like further plot device there. Um, but yeah, when he gets shot behind the eye with the camera, and he's like, it felt like a white hot sewing needle punching through my eye. I was like,
Yeah.
even as a little kid, I'm like, that sounded painful. And then when he puts the mic on his ear, and he's trying to talk to him like that, that's pretty good. I almost wish there was a little bit more of that. But yeah, as he's sitting in the waiting room, he's like, I know you can hear me. Talk to me. And he's like, I don't want to talk to you. And then like he's sitting next to the two people who are there at the doctor's office, and they're engaging with them because they're like, what is going on with this guy? And the lady's like, are you feeling all right? And he's like, would I be in a doctor's office if I was feeling all right? And then
Yeah.
finally he's like, oh God, I'm possessed. And then the doctor comes in after he's been brought back, and you know to one of the rooms there, and the doctor's like, well, I think we can rule out demonic possession. He's like, why is that? He's like, well, because demons talk through you, not to you.
That is a good line.
But you're right. He's trying to listen to the doctor. Martin Short is, while Dennis Quaid can hear everything, and he's like, try and tell this doctor what's going on. And he's not listening to him. And he's floating around in the ear canal. And the doctor, goes to look in there and blinds him with the light. And he's like, oh God, I can't see it. Martin Short's like, he's talking about God. The doctor too, he's like, you're having some kind of theologic, nervous breakdown. He's like, how do we treat that? He's like, well, back in medieval times, you would flay your skin with hot irons. He's like, I have no idea what the modern way to do this is.
I think he says, oh, because the line really stood out to me. I think he said we would flay your skin with rats and fire or something like that.
No, we had,
There's like two specific things.
No, because I had captions on when we watched this, just because if we have to, turn down
Oh, okay.
the movie, I could still pay attention to what's going on. And it was hot branding irons.
Interesting. Okay,
Yeah,
that is definitely not what I heard.
but yeah, that whole moment is pretty great. But I am gonna get to the star of the movie here, and Robert Picardo.
Yup.
We're introduced to him like, I'm assuming he's coming from the restroom, but he's walking to his seat, and I want to say in the background you can kind of see like a couple of guys that look like they're like 80s rock musicians, and one of them is from the New York Dolls. I think it's like the bass player makes a cameo. But he lights up a cigar, and the stewardess immediately tells him that he can't smoke, and he puts it out in his hand and he smells it. And it did make me think of you, since you're a big, fan of cigars. I'm like, could you ever dream of putting a cigar out in your hand? It seems
No,
awful
absolutely
painful. That seems beyond painful, but that is a bit of a throwback to a scene that occurs later when it's talked about his threshold for pain.
not. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and we see him in the hotel. He's like singing a song to himself, and it's funny because as a kid, I thought he did have a hair dryer in his hand, but he's got like a shoe buffer that he
Huh.
pretends to be a gun. Um, and
Yeah, that man loves himself.
oh yeah, just
He does.
him at the club too is just he is like hamming it up the whole time, dancing around. He throws his hat. It, and not only that, throughout this film too, there are little like sound effects that are all like nods to Bugs Bunny, Warner Brothers cartoons. Because like even too, like when he drinks the Southern Comfort, he gets drunk. There's a hiccup. That's from like Bugs Bunny. And too, like he throws his hat, and you hear like sound effect of like whoosh as he throws it, like
Yeah.
like it's like real like you know um, not obnoxious, but like over exaggerated. And then too, like where they're dancing, you hear like he's like making like a lasso, and there you hear like a lassoing sound.
Yeah.
All like little like Warner Brothers nods, which I thought, you know, as a kid, I was always like, how's he making all that those sound effects?
Wow.
um, but
But
they go back to the hotel. Jack, kind of he's right, develops a bit of a crush on Lydia, and
understandable.
yeah, and even he gets mad at Tuck for like, why do you treat her so bad? And he pumps him up. They think Lydia's in the hotel with him. He's not, but he's like he's got his cowboy hat on, and then he's in like bikini briefs, popping open a bottle of
Yeah.
champagne, and he's like, "Don't just knock, come on in, Big Jack." But he just slugs him and knocks him out, and
I mean, I'm not going to say that I've tried that move with the cowboy hat and the champagne, but
uh, I'm just gonna say this in the chat.
uh-oh. Uh, and everybody waits with bated breath.
Yeah, what is it? What's he gonna say? I'm just really slow at typing this out. You'll see. Let's see if that person's still paying attention here. Can't wait to find out.
But yeah.
But so they knock him out. They stick him tie him up, put him in the bathtub, and you hear about it in the beginning. But one of the experiments that Jack was supposed to do with the rabbit, or not Jack, Tuck was, he was going to go and he was going to put a camera behind the eye. He was going to put a mic in the ear, and then the other one was augmenting the face. Which I'm like, I don't get how that would work with a rabbit, but he does it with Martin Short and Robert Picardo. He has Martin Short look at him. He scans his face and he's typing in all this coding, and he tells him what he's going to do. He's like, "I'm going to alter the nerves in your face so they match to look like the cowboy here." And he's like,
Yeah.
he goes, "Is that hard to do?" And he's like, "It's kind of tricky." He's like, "Is it going to hurt?" Probably. And then you start seeing this transformation happen where they're like blowing like air into his mouth and his cheeks expand. I'm like, I want to know like how many takes did they have to do, because I feel like you'd have to do just a few where you'd be just cracking up in the middle of it.
I don't know, with Martin Short, I bet he just committed to it. I bet he did it like 2, maybe 3 takes.
I have to imagine there's got to be a few where like you could tell like they're speeding up the film during that
Oh
moment
yeah.
where it's like, one, you could probably last for so long, but there's gonna be some breaks in there. And then too, he's like, he's typing in the code as it's going on, and he's like, "Is that a 6 or a 5?" And he's like, "It's a 5."
That'll be fine. Be
And
fine.
then you Lydia can hear what's going on, and so she sees the cowboy come out, but he's got Jack's hair, which he looks like this with Martin Short's hair. I mean,
So I do appreciate this. Because I had forgotten because it's been forever since I watched this. Um, you can see the height difference between the two of them in the bottom right corner there,
yeah,
and they don't stick with it right for the entire time that has the cowboy's face. But when he first comes out, they must have had her like on some apple crates or something because he actually is a lot shorter than Robert Picardo is standing next to Meg
yeah,
Ryan. They're more eye to eye. I like that. That was a nice little touch, even though they kind of just like drifted away from that a little bit later on.
yeah, yeah. Um, but she hears him. He comes out. She's all freaked, and she's like, she's looking for Jack, and she's like, "What have you done with Jack?" He's like, "I'm Jack," and he's talking like his voice, but he's the cowboy.
Yeah,
And it's all one shot, and he comes out, and he moves to where it's the back of him, and he does go off screen for a moment. He comes back, and you just see the back of him. But what's impressive is during this time, Robert Picardo, when that change happens, he goes running around back. There is a makeup assistant hanging behind back. He's got tearaway clothing, tears it all off. She gets the wig on him and the gag back on him, and he hops back in the tub to make it all one seamless shot.
it is a really good take.
And it's one of those things where it's like, right, in terms of like how it's done, it's not like it's crazy fancy, but in, like you said, the take and the time that it's done and how smooth it's done, it's impressive. That they
I
do it
think
that way.
what was it called? Okay, yeah, in filmmaking is called the Texas switch, where a double seamlessly replaces an actor or vice versa. And yeah, this is a great example of that because it's very seamless.
And that's one of those things too, like you don't always pick up when those moments happen in films, but there are some times where there are some like just one take moments, and they're usually trying to do some type of trickery like that. FYI, there is a thunderstorm coming in. I don't know if anybody can hear any of that, and I hope I do not lose power. But if I suddenly disappear, that's what happened.
If he suddenly disappears, I don the cowboy outfit. Which one? We'll find out.
You're gonna pop some champagne there.
Well,
You're gonna be like, "Howdy, Big Jeff."
That'll make him howl.
Yeah, yeah. And then what's impressive is then too it switches from Martin Short's voice to Robert Picardo's own voice doing the cowboy, but he does like Martin Short inflections as he talks, and he's
Yeah.
behaving all nervous like Martin Short too at the same time. And they're there to because we started to talk about it. He's a fence for stolen technology. Lydia makes a reference.
Yeah.
She's like, "Who do you think introduced Velcro to the Middle East?" And so he's there to buy the chip that the other folks have, which somewhat doesn't make sense because it's like, why would they be selling it to this guy when they have every plan that they want to use it at the same time too? Because that's what ends up happening afterwards. Like there's a little bit of that doesn't make any sense. But they're there to steal the chip and get it back to the lab. And Kevin McCarthy makes this comment because his gold tooth falls out, and they're kind of surprised by it and some of the way a little bit that he's acting, but they're far more nervous because they think that they're not buying it when they actually think that he is. That they actually do believe that he's the cowboy. They're just goofing around, and he makes his comment. He's like, I don't think you really are the cowboy. And he's like, the cowboy's known for his intense, uh, I forget what he tolerance for pain, and the henchman comes in, who we didn't really talk about too, Vernon Wells. He's got a robotic hand, and he's got all these attachments. He's got like a
I
pistol.
like that his because he just switches them out as whatever job is necessary, and his license plate is it's Snap On.
Yeah, yeah, and it is very James Bond villain-esque. He is kind of like a cross between the Terminator and Jaws from James Bond. Like that's a good way to describe his character. He doesn't say anything in
Yeah,
the movie, but he pops out a propane torch and starts, blow torching these raw eggs in front of Martin Short, and Martin Short gets all stressed out, and then he changes back into Jack, and
yeah, and the change back is much more special effects heavy and more cartoony.
it is. It's got, and a lot of people say it very much. They're like, it makes me think of Total Recall. Well, the guy who did the special effects for this part won. This movie won the Academy Award for special effects in '87. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, yeah, with all the special effects in the film. But
Yeah.
the person who did the animatronics is Rob Bottin, and if you're not familiar with who that is, you're definitely familiar with his work. He's worked on a lot of films that everybody has seen, but mainly ones that stand out are he did a lot of the creature effects for The Thing in 1982. He did Legend with Tom Cruise and Tim Curry, RoboCop, which he did later in the year after this, and Total Recall. I mean, he did regular makeup work too, but he did do animatronic work, and there's a few moments where like the animatronic
Well,
is the bottom middle one. It looks slightly like Christopher Lloyd there, like a gigantic shin.
the transition from just like regular face to the animatronics and special effects was assisted by the fact that Robert Picardo's got one of those like very stretchy faces. Like
Yeah,
when he first
there's a
transforms into
scene
that
where
face, they're like smooth, like stretching his face out, and he kind of looks like Mario 64 when like Mario's face would come up and you could stretch his face out and everything. And
yeah,
basically, that's his face.
yeah, and even to like the bottom right corner there, like that half split of like Martin Short's face. That very much reminds me of The Thing, because there's a lot of moments where like as the creature's changing, they burn one of them. Like it is
Yeah.
like melted in half like that, where it like half of it's like sliding down. Um, but I mean, it is very cartoony, but impressive at the same time for
Oh
when.
yeah, absolutely.
Um, and same thing. I just go like, how many takes did they have to do with blowing that air into their mouth? Because like not only that too, like you can only do that for so long, because it does though like make you choke. Like
Yeah,
you can't breathe.
it'll dry you out.
And I don't have a picture of it, but in that scene, you've got Kevin McCarthy, and I think it's Fiona Lewis is Margaret, that's her name, and then Meg Ryan. They're all reacting to him changing, and like Kevin McCarthy and Fiona Lewis give it like 110%, with like they are in like utter shock, horror, fear. Kevin McCarthy's like performing, like pretending like an exorcism is going on. And even though Meg Ryan knows that it's Jack, still like seeing the transformation happen, like she's like, "Oh, that's gross." Like it's go back and watch those two though are like
I mean,
utterly
it's
terrifying.
supposed to be so disturbing and repulsive because even when he first changed, the cowboy character woke up, looked at him, and went, "Ugh," and passed out.
Yeah, yeah, passes back out.
So yeah, it is supposed to be the transition or the first change to the Cowboys race is nowhere near as this. They put their money and everything into this effect.
Oh yeah. Um, Well, this, and then even too, a lot of like the pod scenes in the body, you can tell.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Another one, yeah, I mean, a lot of the budget went to there, and then from here they they don't end up getting the chip. They kidnap Jack, and the henchman, he gets shrunken down, and they put him inside of Jack's body, or that's the plan, to put him inside of Jack's body, and then he's gonna kill Tuck, and then repilot the ship back out of him. And they even talk about too, like, do we even bother like having him, you know, like pulling him out of Mr. Putter first, or do we just enlarge him? And they're like, you know what kind of mess that would make? Like,
I
ooh,
do. I've seen the episode of Archer that does that.
yeah, like, ooh, that's gruesome. But in this moment, again, he kind of has a moment. Martin Short has a moment with Lydia while they're kind of imprisoned before this procedure is going to happen, and he ends up telling Tuck to turn everything off because he wants to have a moment alone with her, and they end up kissing. And during that time, they don't know it, but we see it. Tuck gets sent into Lydia via the kiss, which, this is the other thing in this movie where I'm like, this just doesn't make any sense either. Where I'm like, wouldn't he know like where he was? Wouldn't he be like, you know, like, don't talk or don't sneeze because I'm like nearby your mouth or something like that? Like, it's very again, it's very plot driven in this point, but
Yeah, the effect that they use whenever he switches over is very much kind of like as if somebody were trying to rehydrate you by mouth, like the amount of fluid just rushing in.
yeah,
Apparently, Martin Short's character is a very sloppy kisser.
or Meg Ryan is. I mean, one of the two. And they don't know it because he can't communicate with Jack or see anything, and they don't know it, but he ends up in Lydia, and while he's in there, though, he does figure out where he is because he finds out that Lydia is pregnant. Because earlier in the film, 2 months prior to all this happening, they had a one night stand, and and you actually get a hint of that when she's in her when she's at work. She's a reporter, and she's at her desk. You actually can tell that she has a picture of Tuck, and over on top of the picture of Tuck is an ultrasound photo.
Oh, didn't notice that.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those things where I don't think you'd notice it on VHS, but I feel like watching it on DVD, or streaming it in 4K, it's a lot. You see a lot more going on. But while Tuck is in Lydia, though, they end up injecting um, the bad guy into Martin Short, and his craft is a little bit different. It's almost more. It's funny. It reminds me of. I remember going to like Epcot as a kid, and they had like these submersible suits. Like, that's almost like it's like a jet powered submersible suit. He's got like a big old like claw hand, and his other hand is,
It definitely looks more evil.
yeah, his mechanical, and it is. It's more menacing. It's this like very dark gray, but it's very streamlined too. And so, yeah, once he gets moved back, and Tuck, they end up, him and Lydia kiss again, and he goes back into Jack, and Jack's like, "There's somebody else in there with you, so be careful." And we do see a little bit of that battle coming up. But here's the pod, and um, Joe Dante did a film called The Explorers. If you ever saw it, it's kind of like Goonies go to space. It's like a good way to describe it. Him and it was the second thing that him and Steven Spielberg worked on together. And a lot of people say, "Oh, the pod makes me think of the Explorers," but I didn't get a picture. But if you look at it, other than the fact that they're kind of both just round ships, that's really the only similarities to them.
Uh,
They actually don't look very much alike, in my opinion. But yeah, he's in this little round pod with all these lights on them. And I always thought though, like the inside of it was kind of neat, like the fact that he could kind of almost spin around like 360, which
Yeah, I mean,
I
it's
thought,
very utilitarian.
yeah, yeah. Though it's funny as a kid because it kind of looks like you can see it in the bottom left picture. Kind of one of them runs across like on top of his left leg underneath the knee there. But there's these two black things. I think they're supposed to be like microphones of some kind. As a little kid, I always thought those were like the handlebars, how he steered.
Turn to the side.
They're like these really tiny little, like they look like little tiny handlebars above the top. But yeah, it's the pod though itself. Yeah, it's pretty neat, and he's got like all like these arms to grip onto things, and he's got a laser cannon. Even too, Ozzy when he's kind of they're videotaping the experiment of what's going on. He talks about like having this like upgraded, like high powered, like special type of laser on there, but that's how he cuts his way through like sections of Martin Short to get from one spot to the other. And then actually
You
you
gotta
can
have something like that.
you can kind of see it there in the bottom right is the bad guy. He's got his main pod gets damaged and then he ejects and he's in a much more streamlined. He's really just a shrunken person at that point with a
He's
little
basically in a diver's suit with a jetpack.
yeah. And that's him on top of the craft, and they're hanging right above Martin Short's stomach, and that's all the stomach acid
Yeah.
burning.
At this point, like, yeah, he like drills into the remaining oxygen supply, which really shortens the amount of time he's got left to get out.
Yeah, and he's trying to get through the window to depressurize them, and he's like, yeah, ripping cables off of them, and so yeah, there's the bad guy pod, which you could see in the top left there, and it's got like these skeletal like jetpacks though, like at the bottom, which I thought were like real interesting because they're just wide open, but they do turn, around, and then he's
Yeah.
got far more like higher intense lights. But his pod though does look far more futuristic and more advanced, but it's clearly far more weaker because yeah, Tuck ends up sticking. I don't know what the arm is, but he sticks it in one of the engines and he disables it, and then yeah, he ejects out of it into like what you said. It's almost like a little like diver mask, and the
Yeah.
bottom middle there is you get like the one line from Vernon Wells where he just screams. That's all he says. That's the only and he gets digested by Martin Short's stomach acid.
Yep. It's the only scene in the entire movie where some parents might not be super okay with putting it on the TV while people are hanging out waiting for Thanksgiving dinner to start.
We
Because
were
some
watching
kids
it
would
on.
look at that and it'd be like, "Oh, that's a little too much for my kid." Some people might think that, but
We
because I mean, otherwise the movie's very just kind of like ridiculous, family friendly sort of thing, and then you've got this little bit of gruesomeness.
see you later, Jeff. We'll see you in a week on the channel. By the way, looking forward to that.
Oh yeah.
Well, I'll say we were watching it on our 82-inch TV coffee shop. We were watching on our big 82-inch TV, so that's how we watched it the other night. But it's funny. Joe Dante always kind of has a scene like that because even like in Gremlins, right? The Spike, the evil gremlin at the end, he gets like cooked in the fountain, and he kind of looks similar. Like his skeleton body is all melted away.
I'll take your word for it. I've actually never seen Gremlins.
You haven't? Oh man.
I've seen clips. That's it.
Wow. You're missing out. So we're gonna try to wrap this up here soon with in theaters.
Ooh.
There's even another better shot where you can see his little body hanging off the top of the pod.
I feel like since we don't have our bumpers, I need to be like boom dum boom dum boom and just like do some, like some like
I can hear it in
like
my
plunge
head.
it version.
Yeah, I can hear it in my head. But it's funny is hey, this was a movie that you reviewed while me and JT were gone. Dragnet.
That's a
Number
good
one.
one.
And this opened at number 2, so it's one of those things you look at it and it's like had a pretty good opening for its time. I mean, it did $10 million. It it beat out Spaceballs. The only other movie that it kind of had against it at the time was Adventures in Babysitting. Beverly Hills Cop was out. That had been out for a while though, but even Predator had been out for a little bit.
Predator was in week 4, Untouchables in 5.
And then Henry and
Harry
the
and the Hendersons was in week 5.
You know what? And we reviewed that too. And what's funny is I never realized that Harry and the Hendersons opened up a week before Predator. So Kevin
Huh.
Peter Hall played both those characters. I didn't realize that those movies were so close to each other. But yeah, that
I kind of have to wonder if the flash that this had, like right at the start, was the weekend that it opened, its timing in the summer, and probably more Dennis Quaid's like name than Martin Short's, at least at the time, because this was before like really Martin Short like, really kind of became the name.
well, if you look at what it was mainly up against, right? Dragnet and Spaceballs were the two bigger pictures there. And then the other thing it was up against was Adventures in Babysitting. So it doesn't surprise me
Yeah,
that everything else had been out for a while. I mean, the only other exception for something that hadn't been out that long, but it was clearly in a limited release at the time, was Full Metal Jacket. That was the only other thing that was anywhere
yeah.
near the time frame, or even Roxanne with Steve Martin, which looked like
Well, I
that
mean,
kind
but just in general, I'm trying to figure out why something that made what was it like 27 million? I think you said at the box office made about a third of that the first weekend, and then that was a hard fall off to
again,
have that.
I think it's one of those things. Word of mouth was not what it was like it is today with social media.
I'm not going to make you look this up on the fly. Folks can look it up and let us know. I'm wondering what released the next weekend if something came out that killed the momentum for it and maybe some of these other movies.
That's very true. I didn't look at that. That's a really good point. One thing I will mention here is originally for this film, they wanted to cast Arnold Schwarzenegger in the Tuck Pendleton role and Michael J.
Hmm.
Fox for the Jack Putter role. And
Okay.
Arnold at the time had not done any comedy. He was wanting to get into comedy, but he felt like this had too much action to it, and so he backed out of it. And when he backed out of it, Michael J. Fox did. Now, I love this movie. I love who's in it, but part of me goes, I'd love to have seen that. Because that's
I don't hate it. I
when this
kind of
movie
like
was
the idea.
pitched, the way it was described was it was Dean Martin goes into, or not Dean Martin. It was Jerry Lewis goes into Dean Martin's body. Right, I'm sorry, Dean Martin goes into Jerry Lewis's body. I'm sorry. So right, like the stronger person goes into a weaker person, um,
Yeah.
which very much, right, is how this movie works. Now, before Dennis Quaid, Martin Short came on, one of the combos that they were looking at, and it's another one too. Like, golly, what a great team up this would have been to have seen, was Mel Gibson,
Hmm.
Tuck Pendleton role, and Robin Williams as the Jack Putter role, as well as Ted Danson and Rick Moranis too, or another combination there.
Okay. Interesting.
Which,
Interesting.
yeah, I thought was really really great. Just trying to look. Is there anything else that point out that in terms of just details, notes? I got one last thing. This is really for little Spidey. Little Spidey's a big Lego nut, and I forget what they call
Ooh.
it. Lego does this thing where people submit ideas for new Lego kits, and if it gets enough votes, they'll make it into a Lego kit. That's where they kind of get some of like their ideas. I forget what they
Okay.
call it exactly. Oh, that's when they get shrunk down. All these shrunk down scenes, a lot of them, yeah, they were all force perspective. And like in the car was, they're
Yeah.
see the car. That car is 20 feet deep, so they're 20 feet away from them to give that perspective of just they're much smaller. Which I always am very impressed by the force perspective, how they do all that. Um, but here, people that had created Lego ideas for the pod and that that
Oh, that's
because
cool.
is a fairly there's people that you know that are big fans of this film, and then well as the bad guys pot up there too. In fact, there's 3D printed models, 3D models that you can get, and if you have a 3D printer, you can print them out and have these two little ships and paint them up. And if you're that big of a fan, which yeah, I wanted to share that. So hopefully he sees that. But that's it. That's all I got for Innerspace. I was gonna say, I mean, I feel like you enjoyed this movie.
It's one of those where, like, I can't say anything bad about it, but honestly, it's, to me, it's kind of forgetful. It's enjoyable. It's fun. It is, but nothing really sticks with me with this movie. Actually, on this rewatch, some of the effects and the Texas switch that we talked about with Robert Picardo doing two different things, that was far more memorable to me than the entire movie. Like within an hour after I watched it. So I'm not
Well,
saying that I didn't like it. I just am kind of like, oh, it's a nice little and then I move on with my life.
well, I was gonna say, unlike the Great Outdoors, I feel like you enjoyed this a lot more. Where you're like,
Yes.
so that's what I mean. Like, I feel like you like this. I'm not saying like you go, it's the greatest, and even I don't. I mean, like I said, for me, how I kind of grew up watching this, maybe it's a little bit more of a special. I have a little bit more love for it than most people in that regard. But like
No,
I said,
anything like that, yeah, you have a certain amount of nostalgia factor that's going to factor into
yeah,
it. So,
but it is a fun movie to watch. Like I said, it's fun to
yes,
watch it every now and then. It's enjoyable. But like you said too, it's not something where there's a ton of stuff other than I was gonna say when he digests the bad guy. I love that line from Dennis Quaid. It was like,
congratulations, you just
Jack,
digested the bad guy.
wait, he goes, you just digested the bad guy. um, so yeah, like you said, it does. It's got these good little moments. It is, it does have some flaws to it, but at the same time, it is a fun movie just to watch it when it's on, or it is. It's one of those things like, you know what? I
Yeah,
haven't seen this in a while. Let's watch it. Okay, great. Um, so yeah. If you haven't seen this, definitely check it out. It's very underrated. But
yeah, it's worth watching. I mean, like I said, I don't want to make it sound like I'm hating on it. It's just,
no, I
it's a light movie, if that makes sense to people. Like you're not going to have to give it 100% of your attention to enjoy it, but you are kind of rewarded if you do. And it's especially enjoyable if you like that kind of like over the top Martin Short, like living cartoon sort of
yeah,
physical comedy that he really dives into in a few scenes.
yep. No, I agree with that. Now normally we've just been doing shows every other week, but we've got a special one coming up. We're actually gonna be back next week with a we're gonna do something a little different. We're gonna have a mini movie review. We're gonna review a an episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000. We had planned to do this a long time ago when it was me, JT, and Maria, and some stuff happened. We weren't able to do it at the time, but it's gonna be Boggy Creek 2. So you can watch that free on YouTube on the Mystery Science Theater channel. But we're gonna talk about that, and then we've got two special guests. We're actually gonna have Alaskan Jeff on, and then we're gonna have my nephew come on. Both of them have some Bigfoot stories that they are gonna share with us. So uh,
Looking
you and
forward to that.
I are kind of in the same boat. We're intrigued by Bigfoot. We would like to believe in Bigfoot. We just we have not experienced it or seen any evidence solid enough to where it makes us believe in it. But we think it's a fun thing. Whereas these two,
On that, and I would just, people are gonna have to tune into that to tune in. Or I'm old. People are gonna have to watch that episode to hear all of my thoughts on this. But I think that everything like that has an origin, and even tracing the real world origin is as interesting to me as the stories and the fantastical tales behind it. So I always love hearing anybody's experience on that. So
yeah, yeah. but since they both have firsthand experience, we thought it'd be fun. So we got two people kind of in the same boat on one side and two people on the other. But we're just really going to be more just listening in on what they have to share with us. So it's going to be a little bit longer episode than normal, but yeah, tune in for that. It's going to be at 9:30 Central Time, so 10:30 Eastern. But yeah, we'll be back next Saturday for that one. And before we go, Beard, any thing you have coming up this week besides next Saturday?
People can find me most Tuesdays over with Jacob Ironside on his channel. I've had to miss a couple of episodes, just scheduling, and the last one actually I missed was due to just some weird technical thing where no browser wanted to recognize that my webcam or my existed, despite audio software and OBS recognizing that they existed. So I think I finally got all that sorted out. Got myself a fancy new camera so y'all can see all the gray in my beard properly. So I think we're good.
Yeah. Well, no problem. Well, good deal. Well, thanks again for tuning in tonight. We had fun talking about this, and we'll see you all next week. Take care.
Hard out.